I said, Joe, we gotta go, gotta get down to the lake. I found this magic lure, gotta try it, I can't wait. Boat said, Joe, if you wanna set the hook, then you best don't go. You sit down here and watch a Johnny Johnson fishing show, 'cause he's a super fast man, not a bad looking feller, and the fish are scared and they just smile as they go by, and they wrestle a big old alligator for a 5-pounder hook. He knows things that any normal man just wouldn't know. So put that lure down and pay attention and we'll go. But first we're gonna watch a Johnny Johnson fishing show.
Oh, there's a good one right there. Good fish right there. Little Alamo Lake bass. That persuader spinnerbait, look at that. Come on, dude. Look how green that fish is. Oh my goodness, you're healthy. That's a buck bass up there. Folks, today we're at Alamo Lake, and it's going into summer. It's starting to get hot now. We're looking at some real hot days coming along, and I'm throwing a spinnerbait. I just figured, you know, we got to cover some water. Let's cover some water, see what's going on. A lot of times on this lake, I try to find a place where I can cover some water and feel confident where I can get bit. And there's not a better bait in the world to throw than a spinnerbait when you're wanting to cover water along in this brush. It's weedless pretty much. It gets through all that stuff. If they're eating shad, they're gonna eat it. The water's a little dingy. I went with a chartreuse and white type spinnerbait with my little grub tail on there. Now, I am throwing the persuader. It's a 3/8 ounce bait. It's a persuader E-chip. And I'll show you the E-chip back there. That's the little E-chip. Now what happens is when that little dude hits anything in there, let me get that off there. When that little dude ricochets off some of this brush that's in here, these trees, it sends off a little pulse and makes it look like it's shad trying to run or get away, or, you know, it just gives that little noise that we need to get those fish to feel the vibration, hear the clicks, whatever it takes to get them to bite. And that particular bait is awesome. And so I've always caught a lot of fish on this lake, and I don't get to come here as often as I wish I could, but let me tell you something. The one thing I love about this lake is it's pretty much dominated by fishermen, and I love it. I don't care if I got to zig and zag out of fishermen all day long. It's fun. You don't have near the wakeboarders and things like that going on out here. And because it's a smaller type lake and there's a lot of brush and trees and stuff, so you're kind of out of that neighborhood. But you can come here and catch a lot of fish and have a lot of fun. Now the ticket to today's success, if we're gonna catch them on a spinnerbait, is I like to throw a 17-pound test line, especially when you're in brush or trees. And that's the thing with a spinnerbait. It's a reaction bait. You can throw heavier line with it and be assured to get those fish back to the boat. So that's very important to throw that 17-pound. 15 to 17 is awesome for these kind of baits. Oh, there's one right there in the tree. Oh, he's coming right out of there. You gotta get that bait in the bush. You gotta get that bait in the bush and you'll catch them. Oh my goodness. That's what makes this clothespin effect spinnerbait thing work so well. Look at that. Oh, he ate it good too. Nice little buck bass. You know, we don't have to worry about the spawn no more. Right now, the only spawn you got to worry about is the shad spawn. Shad spawn can be really good right after the spawn, right after the bass spawn. You have the shad spawn, and a lot of times they'll just be busting shad up along the bank and all that kind of stuff. And they do it at every lake, so it's just a timing thing. If you can find the right timing for it. But what's cool about this bait is it sits straight up and down from the blades. The hook does, okay, and that makes it pretty much weedless. So as it's coming over things or coming through the brush right here, you can get them hooked up pretty good. A lot of fun to throw it in that thick stuff. You can't be afraid to throw this bait in some of that thick stuff. Now I know a lot of guys are going to be going, oh, you know, it's not windy there today. How are you catching spinnerbait bass? Well, let me tell you something. When you're in dingy water and you're around brush, you can still catch those spinnerbait bass even when it's not windy. Wind, a little tiny wind always helps. But if you don't have it and they're still chasing those shad, you got to throw something out there they'll get. And you really can't get much better than this, covering some water. And that's what we'll do. We'll just cover some water and see if we can find where these fish are, where these bigger fish might be. There he is, got him. I had to flip it out there, but I got him. Come on, son. Get in here. Get in here. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I flipped that bait right up into those trees and caught that little guy. Sometimes you got to do that too. You know, we've talked a lot about that in the past on, you know, just getting that bait where the fish are actually living. And a lot of times you even got to flip a spinnerbait up in there and just let it flutter down right there, and they'll just hit it right there, crush it. So there's one. Oh, that's a better fish too. That's what I'm saying right there. Oh yeah, that Persuader spinnerbait. I hit that piece of wood and he crushed it. All right. It says a lot about that little leech hit, I tell you. Little bit bigger bass. Get around this wood, we might start catching some bigger fish. Look at that. That's a beautiful fish, isn't it? They're in that post-spawn stage. What's really fun about the post-spawn is they get on a feeding binge like you wouldn't believe. It's so much fun. And you'll have certain parts of the day where you just don't feel like you can do no wrong, you know? And they'll just crush these baits. I tell you, if they are on shad, you almost can't beat a spinnerbait when they are on shad because you got those little blades that reflect, and bass can't stand it. They gotta have it. You know, they think these imitate little shad running across the water, and of course this could be a bluegill or something chasing them. And the bass will go after the bigger meal. A lot of times what happens is they'll end up crushing, that's why I like the lighter wire too. They'll end up crushing that wire down and then catching the hook with their mouth right there. So that particular technique to do in the trees is really fun because you can let it flutter down and they'll just eat the whole bait. I gotta retie this bait. That's another thing that's very important to do, is retie frequently. You don't want to lose that big bass when you finally do get that bite. And I'll tell you, when you're bringing it through wood, rock, and all kinds of things, even if you're catching a few fish or a lot of fish, stop and retie just a few seconds, man. It's always worth it. And never tie a swivel on this. Very important to remember, you tie direct right there on these spinnerbaits. I'm using a Palomar knot, you just tie direct right there. Don't use a swivel. I've seen guys try to use swivels. The swivel slides up here. You want to tie the knot direct, and you'll have a lot of fun catching fish on that spinnerbait. I'm gonna retie right now and get back at it. Got him. There's one. I had to stop, pause it, and shake it. Oh no, get out of there. Not a giant, But it's crazy how I got bit with that dude. Go on. It's crazy how I got bit with him because I was out of the brush piles there, and what I ended up doing, and it works a lot for me when I'm spinnerbaiting, is stop the bait. You're retrieving it slow. Stop the bait, pause it, twitch it, pop those blades, start reeling again, and they pop it. So if you got one following it a lot of times, you can create something there that they'll probably try to bite, because what they do is they might be tracking it, and when they're tracking the bait, they'll follow it, they're looking at it and everything, but when it pauses and then pops like that, like it's dying and then, or trying to run from them, that's when they actually initiate the strike and get it. So a lot of times if you're out of the brush, you can get away with doing that with your bait, and it helps make sure that your blades are still turning. One other thing that's really important to remember about spinnerbait fishing at a place especially like Alamo is it's a lot of fun to do, but I would really highly suggest throwing at least one gold blade. I got a gold silver combination, and look at my size of my blade combination today. It's a small blade combination today because the little shad are just real small. They're spawning and just really small shad. So I'm going with that, but that gold blade offers a little bit more flash in that dirtier water than the silver, but the combination of the two works great because the water's not like dirty, but it's dingy, and it, you know, it warrants using a gold blade for sure. If it got any muddier, if I was in muddy water, I'd go with a Colorado blade, but the double willow leaf blade will get the job done on this lake 99.9% of the time, and you'll have a lot of fun with it. Got it. I just twitched it right there and he smoked it. Little guy. I was just slow rolling it and just stopped and twitched it. Ooh, man, it's starting to get hot. We're here in the middle of May and it's like, whew, man, I'm telling you, it's hot. It's not even noon yet. That's fun. You know what we've done is we've come from off the bank up there, you know, where the fish might kind of start moving out. I've seen some shad blipping out here. So we've kind of moved out into the deeper water, seeing if we can't catch some of those fish that are moving out. So that's what we're doing, is we're on the edge of this tree line right now. We're just working our way up. Let's see. Got him. There he is. I'm like, I saw something in there flashing. Not a big one. One thing we're finding out as the day goes on, the fish are getting smaller. You know, one thing important to do too with this bait is always tune it. Now you can tell even with that little bass, look how he spread that bait out like that. So what I mean by tuning it, it's not like a guitar, although I've had to tune those too. But you want the arm to be directly behind the bait, or on top of the hook, I should say. So in saying that, we need to straighten it out so it doesn't roll. Make sure the wire is straight, and then straighten it up over that, and then bring the bait down where it goes straight over the hook, just like that, and make sure that it's straight up and down and it's not sideways, like this crank sideways or that way. Otherwise you're going to roll your bait when you start throwing it. So just always make sure you tune it and make sure it's right over top, and that'll help you catch more fish and keep that bait from rolling. Got him. Oh, don't you do that. Ah. Oh my goodness. Well, it happens. But he wrapped me right around that bush. Came right off. You get up in these trees, anything can happen. That's why you got to have that heavy line, but still, stuff like that happens every so often. Now, a lot of times what I'm doing right now is I'm letting that bait actually fall. So I'm bringing it over top of the trees like this, and I'll throw it out there, bring it over top of the tree. I'll rustle it over the tree a little bit, hoping they're right there. If I don't get bit, I'll just kill it. and that bait will flutter down, and that's how I caught that other fish. It'll just flutter down, and then you start reeling it again, and boom, they hit it, or a lot of times they'll hit it right on the flutter. But it helicopters down, and I'll tell you, that last blade there starts rolling like that. They can't stand it sometimes right there in that neighborhood of where they're at. And they think it's a dying shad or something heading down there, and they're gonna go get it. Hey folks, for my tip of the week, one thing really important to remember, especially as the bite gets a little slower throughout the day, if you want to keep throwing this bait or go to something else, would be smart. Because what ends up happening is these fish will get tighter to the wood. So instead of being out 4 or 5 feet or chasing anything out 4 or 5 feet, they're going to be right on it. The other ticket is you want to put yourself in a position where you might be able to flip your bait into some of that shade. There's some shade there next to the tree. Bring it by the tree, let it fall, let it flutter, maybe hit the bush a little bit, ricochet it off, but you want to get it as close to the wood as you can. Now, during the day, that's what happens is you'll notice the bite starts slowing down a little bit, so make sure you're tighter to the cover, make sure your cast a little more precise, and you'll keep getting bit. I got to throw a big shout out to Ace and his crew at Wickenburg Marine for getting us back out on the water. We had a slight emergency. We wouldn't have got this show done today without them. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you at Wickenburg Marine. I shook that thing down there, and there he was. You know, creating that little E-chip to do a little knocking down there really might be doing the trick for these little guys anyway. Because what I'm doing is I'm throwing right up there where the big wood is, hoping a big bass will be right there. And if I don't, I'll just start slow rolling it. Now, slow rolling it, I'll stop, twitch it, and that's when I just got that hit. The last 2 hits have been from doing that. You know, it's very important when you're doing this kind of fishing to make sure that you're throwing the right equipment. And what I mean by that is when you're throwing in this wood, you know, it's important, especially with a spinnerbait, you got to get that big, you know, hook in the fish. It's a thick hook, right? So you need something stout to set the hook with. So on top of using the, oh, and I got to retie here, but on top of using the 17-pound test line, I've paired that up with my medium heavy Taipan 7.2 my spinnerbait rod. I love this thing, but you can see it's got a good little tip on it, but look at the backbone. Look where it starts setting the hook. And I'll tell you, that is huge right there when it comes to spinnerbait fishing, because a lot of times they'll slap it, turn, the tip gives it a chance for them to suck it in, and to, you know, when they flare their gills and they inhale that bait, that tip will react, and then you got plenty of backbone to set the meat to that fish so you can get that hook in the fish. You don't want to be throwing a spinnerbait, something like this, on a light type action rod, because you'll never get the hook in the fish, and especially when you have to throw a distance away. So if you're throwing making long casts, if you're throwing something light and you're throwing light line, because lighter line will stretch farther, I'll tell you, it's hard to get the hook set in the fish. So be sure you're throwing the right equipment. It'll help you catch a lot more fish. Hey, we're here at DD26. Dave, you guys also have another great product, the steering locks. Explain to us what they are and why they are so important to make sure when you're trailering your boat. Yeah, steering locks are a great way with hydraulic steering systems to eliminate that left and right swing on your engine. Okay. So when you're going down the road, you know, motor totes will help you absorb that vertical vibration. The steering locks, when you put these guys on, and you'll hear ours with a very positive lock. When that's on there, you know it's not going anywhere, and it's blocking your engine from swinging left or right when you corner. That's awesome. Got another great product by DD26. I'll tell you what, I've had a good time on the show today. Alamo Lake, man. I'll tell you what, It's starting to get really hot right now. I'm done, but I'll tell you, I've had a good time on this lake. Get out early in the morning, you can get a lot of fishing done between the hours of, say, 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning, till about 10:30, and then it gets extremely hot. If you can handle it and stay out, that's fine. Just make sure you drink plenty of water, use plenty of sunblock, and hey, I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us. I'm Johnny Johnson. Now, see, that's what I'm talking about, folks.